Hello, I'm Demi Utley, and I am here today to talk about how to actually organize your proposal. So this is a question that I've been asked a few times. So I wanted to just go ahead and create a quick short video for you talking through my favorite ways to structure proposals. Let's go ahead and get started. So first, I want to start with an easier situation, and that is when you're responding to RFPs. So most of the time when you have an RFP, they typically will have a section that is called the format section, or they'll just kind of say, like, this is the structure we want you to follow when you send back your proposal. So of course, in those situations, that is the structure that you should follow. If you're working on an RFP and it does not have that section, then I actually normally use the evaluation criteria as the structure that I'm going to follow for that proposal. So let's say they have, company qualifications as the first requirement in the evaluation criteria, then that will be the first section in my proposal after, say, the cover letter. And then I just work down the evaluation criteria until it's all there. And then that's the format I follow in the proposal. If you're working on an RFP that does not have a format section and it does not have evaluation criteria, then you can use the non-RFP structure that I use for proposals. So I'll go over that in just 1 second. But first, I just wanted to talk about forms, because I know when you're working on RFPs, that is always a tricky situation, is where exactly should I be including my forms in my RFP response? So what I do is, in most cases, I'll just include them at the very end of my response. So I would have, all of the sections that they outline, all of the evaluation criteria if I'm doing that, and then have something that's like Appendix A or Attachment A and just call that required forms. So normally I'll just group them all together and have all of the forms in one section, unless, say, they're asking for forms and also certificates and also financial statements. Then each of those are going to have their own, Appendix A, Appendix B, whatever it is. And you can, this is flexible. It just depends on the RFP and how exactly they ask for it. If in doubt, you can ask them in the question and answer period where exactly they want to see the forms, because sometimes they do have interesting submission requirements where maybe you have to have it in a separate envelope or as a separate attachment or something like that. But I would say 95% of the time, it's something that I just include at the very end. Okay, so now that we talked about the RFPs and the forms, let's talk about the actual structure and the organization that I normally use for proposals in non-RFP situations. So first, of course, there's the cover page. I'm not going to go into detail on this one, but this is just the page that's a nicely designed cover for your proposal, and it's the first thing that they see when they open your document. After that, I like to include a cover letter, and this is I would say, the most personal section in the proposal, where you are speaking directly to the customer and the buyer, and it normally has either key points or it speaks to your relationship. It really just depends on the specific opportunity, but this is the more personal section of the proposal, and the cover letter is a great way to really start kind of selling and connecting with the reader before they dive into the rest of your proposal. After the cover letter, normally there's the table of contents, which is self-explanatory. But after that, I like to start with the project summary. So the project summary is a short overview where you're, of course, summarizing the project and what they can expect when they work with you. So I'll give you an example. So in my business, we used to offer RFP proposal writing consulting. And in the proposals that I would send, my project summary section would say, Utley Strategies will provide proposal writing services in response to this RFP, and then just kind of quickly go over a few details of the project. So it was just a quick 1, maybe 3 paragraph summary of the project and what is included in it. And then in the next section, which is solution overview, that's where you go into more detail. So I have the project summary that quickly introduces the project, and then it immediately leads into this solution overview. So the solution overview details your offer, what it is that you're selling to them, and what they can expect when they're working with you. So if you're selling a product, then this is where you're going to be describing the product itself, any features or benefits of using the specific product, how you'll get the product to them, if there's like a timeline or anything that they need to follow, any warranty or customer service SLAs, like things like that, any expectations that they should have around the actual product. That's what you're going to include in the solution overview. And then if you're selling services, of course, this is where you're going to detail your services. So you might have something like an implementation approach, which maybe has like phases. Maybe you do design, discovery, I don't know, development, testing, and then implementation. So you would break down each of those and kind of talk about that in a bit more detail. And then you also should have either a schedule or some sort of example timeline for them to know how long this project is going to take and what they should expect. And if you don't know exactly how long it's going to be, say it's dependent on certain things, then you can give an example and then have just like a note that says, the timeline may vary based on XYZ, just so you're kind of covered there. But I do recommend having some sort of timeline, especially for service projects, well, really for any project, so they know how long to expect until they get the result that they need. The other thing that I like to include in the solution overview, especially for services projects, is a section on what's in scope and what's out of scope. So in this, you'll go through and say, okay, in scope is, let's say it's a web design project. So maybe in scope is actually designing the website, developing the backend, all of these things. But out of scope is like writing the content or taking pictures to include on the website. So you're expecting the customer to provide all of those. And you can also have a section in this solution overview of customer requirements or customer deliverables, whatever you want to call it. So that way they know exactly what they need to provide to you in order for you to be able to do the job. You want to make sure that the project is clear and well-defined, so that way the customer knows exactly what they're going to get and how you're going to do the work or provide the product, to reduce any sort of confusion and scope creep down the line. After the solution overview, I like to go into what I call the team overview. So in this section, it will start out with normally at least a paragraph, just kind of introducing your team and how they will work with them, the customer. And then if you are doing a service project, you would list out bios of any key team members. So maybe like a project manager, the team lead, anything like that, and then just explain why they're on this project and what their skill set is. And then if you're doing a product-based proposal, then normally the team overview section might have a bio of like your account manager or maybe a customer service person, or just kind of speak to those areas if you don't have someone dedicated. So that way they know what type of support they're going to get once they buy from you. So this is the place where you're going to talk about your team and just make them feel like they're going to be supported once they do decide to work with you and that they're working with experts. After the team overview, we're going to take it back to a higher level and focus on the company. So the next section is the company qualification section. And this one is where I really like to focus on the company and, of course, why they're qualified to do the work. So you can think about this as showing kind of like a resume almost for your company, though not that structure. But you might include examples of past clients you've worked with, maybe like mini case studies, or even just a few bullet points of different examples of projects you've done. You could also include any notable achievements or company statistics. So for example, if you're selling in the healthcare space and you've worked with 150 medical groups, then you could list that as a statistic in this section to show that you are an expert in the industry and you've worked with those people in this space. And then another thing you might include is like awards, any sort of achievements or anything that your company has received at the company level to show that you are, you're an expert in the space, your organization is prepared to do the work, and they can trust you to follow through on what it is that you're proposing in this proposal. After the company qualifications, we have pricing. So pricing, of course, is not as content focused as the other sections. A lot of times pricing maybe just has a sentence or two, and then it has a table of your price offer. So this is a pretty straightforward section. I will say from a content perspective, if there's anything that you need to kind of explain, make sure you do that in this section. So if there's something that they have to pay, like say you have an optional add-on, so in the website example, say you did offer photography, but it's at an additional cost. So you could have another item that says optional, photography for X dollars. You could also have something that says, your payment plan, like how frequently you expect to be paid, if deposits are required, just how they're going to work with you from the price perspective. So you can include that information here so they know exactly what's expected as far as pricing and what they're going to get and what they will have to pay. And then the final section that I like to include is what I call the why us section. So by this point in your proposal, they maybe have read the cover letter in detail. They most likely have skimmed most of the proposal, and then they get to the pricing, they stop there. And at this point, they're trying to decide, can I justify paying this price to get what they're putting in this proposal? Is it worth it? So the why us section is where you answer that question and you show, yes, this is why you should choose to work with us. This is why it's worth the cost for you. And this is the benefit of working with us. So this is where I like to include any of your key differentiators, anything that's like a competitive advantage or anything that's really important to the customer that you know you can uniquely solve. So ending on this final note is a great way to end your proposal with that final sales pitch. And it gives them a way to sort of justify using that cost and investing in working with you to get what they need. So, okay, so that is everything that I include in my proposal and the main structure that I follow. I've included it in the notes below in case you didn't write all of it down, so you have it laid out. And then I also linked to a blog post that goes into this in a bit more detail. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and make sure you subscribe so you get notified of future videos, and I'll see you in the next video.